Picture this: a towering beacon of knowledge, its halls filled with the wisdom of centuries, reduced to ash in a single catastrophic event. The burning of the Library of Alexandria wasn't just the loss of a building, it was the vanishing of an entire world's intellectual heritage. Imagine walking through its corridors, surrounded by scrolls containing everything from the secrets of the stars to the philosophies that shaped civilizations. This wasn't just a library, it was the greatest treasure trove of human thought the ancient world had ever seen, holding somewhere between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls at its peak. And then, in what feels like a cruel twist of fate, it was gone. But here's the thing: the story of the Library of Alexandria isn't just about its tragic end. It's about the astonishing brilliance that flourished within its walls, the minds who walked its halls, and the ideas that changed history forever. This was a place where the boundaries of science, literature, and philosophy were pushed further than ever before. Think about it. What if we could step back in time and uncover the secrets buried in those lost scrolls? What if we could finally piece together the truth about how this legendary institution rose to such heights and how it ultimately fell? That's exactly what we're diving into today. From its surprising origins as a dream of Alexander the Great to the heated debates still raging over who or what sealed its fate, we're uncovering 10 mind-blowing facts about the Library of Alexandria. Some will challenge what you thought you knew. Others might leave you wondering how much more we could have learned if those scrolls had survived. So, are you ready to unravel the mysteries of this ancient wonder? Let's begin. While Alexander the Great famously founded the city of Alexandria in 331 BCE, the Great Library itself wasn't actually his creation. That honor belongs to one of his most trusted generals, Ptolemy I, also known as Ptolemy Soter. After Alexander's sudden death in 323 BCE, his empire splintered and Ptolemy seized control of Egypt. By 283 BCE, he had a vision, transforming Alexandria into the intellectual heart of the ancient world. And so the Library of Alexandria was born, not as a royal vanity project, but as a bold declaration that knowledge itself was power. The Ptolemies didn't just want a library, they wanted every scroll, every book, every scrap of wisdom the world had to offer. They sent agents across the Mediterranean, buying, borrowing, and sometimes even seizing texts from every culture they encountered. Ships arriving in Alexandria's bustling harbor were searched not for contraband but for manuscripts. Any scroll found was confiscated, copied by the library's scribes, and only then returned to its owners. The Ptolemies weren't just collectors, they were intellectual conquerors, amassing a treasure trove of Greek philosophy, Egyptian astronomy, Persian medicine, and more. This obsession with knowledge wasn't purely academic. The library became a symbol of Alexandria's dominance, a way for the Ptolemies to prove their city wasn't just another Hellenistic kingdom, but the center of human thought. Scholars from across the ancient world flocked there, drawn by the promise of unlimited resources and royal patronage. Imagine a place where Euclid mapped out geometry, where Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference, where physicians dissected corpses to advance medicine. The Ptolemies didn't just build a library, they built an engine of discovery, fueled by an insatiable hunger to possess every idea ever written. And yet, for all their ambition, there's a tragic irony here. The very dynasty that sought to preserve all knowledge ultimately couldn't protect its greatest achievement. But that's a story for another fact. The Ptolemies didn't just want a library, they wanted to own knowledge itself. And Ptolemy III took this mission to shocking new heights with what might be history's first state-sponsored book heist. Here's how it worked. Whenever a ship docked in Alexandria's harbor, royal officials would board and search for one thing above all else: scrolls. Not spices, not gold, but books. Any text found was immediately seized and whisked away to the library's copying rooms, where teams of scribes worked tirelessly to reproduce them. The originals, they stayed permanently in the library's collection, while the copies, if the owners were lucky, might be returned. This wasn't just borrowing, it was a systematic, almost ruthless campaign to vacuum up every written work in the known world. Imagine being a merchant arriving from Athens with a rare philosophical treatise, or a scholar from India carrying sacred texts, only to have them confiscated by royal decree. The policy was so aggressive that the Ptolemies even borrowed the official copies of Greek playwrights like Aeschylus and Sophocles from Athens, supposedly to copy them, then brazenly kept the originals and sent back cheap reproductions, forfeiting their massive security deposit without a second thought. But beneath this apparent piracy lay something revolutionary, an unshakable belief that no idea, no matter how distant or foreign, was unworthy of preservation. Scrolls poured in from every corner of the ancient world: Greek poetry, Babylonian star charts, Indian mathematical treatises, Persian medical manuals. The library's shelves became a chaotic yet dazzling mosaic of global thought. Scholars could study Egyptian irrigation techniques alongside Aristotelian logic, or compare Hindu astronomy with Phoenician trade records. No other institution in history had ever attempted such an all-encompassing snapshot of human knowledge. What's fascinating is how this mirrored Alexandria itself, a bustling crossroads where Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, and Persian cultures collided daily. The library didn't just collect books, it embodied the city's spirit of frenzied intellectual exchange. And while the methods were heavy-handed, the result was undeniable. For the first time, humanity's scattered wisdom had a single address. Of course, this hunger came at a cost, not just to disgruntled travelers, but to the library's legacy. Because the same obsession that built this wonder may have also planted the seeds of its eventual destruction. The Library of Alexandria didn't just collect scrolls, it collected minds. Among its most extraordinary features was the so-called Hall of Living Books, where the greatest thinkers of the ancient world weren't just visitors, they became part of the library's very fabric. Picture this: instead of reaching for a scroll on geometry, you could summon Euclid himself to walk you through his latest theorems. Or if you were curious about levers and buoyancy, Archimedes might sit down with you to sketch out his experiments. These scholars weren't mere residents, they were walking, talking reference materials available for intellectual check-out by anyone granted access to the library's halls. This wasn't just about convenience, it transformed the library into something far more dynamic than a repository of texts. Imagine the energy of those conversations. A young student debating astronomy with Aristotle, or a visiting physician refining their techniques under the guidance of Herophilus, the father of human anatomy. The library didn't just house knowledge, it pulsed with it, fostering a culture where ideas could be challenged and refined in real time. No dusty, silent reading rooms here. Alexandria's halls buzzed with heated discussions, spontaneous lectures, and the clatter of stylus on wax as thinkers scribbled diagrams and equations mid-debate. What's remarkable is how this system blurred the line between text and teacher. A scroll could explain Euclid's geometric principles, but only Euclid could respond when you hit a stumbling block, adapting his explanations on the spot. Archimedes' writings might detail his theories, but face to face, he could demonstrate them with makeshift models or thought experiments. This was education as a living, breathing exchange, where the boundaries between research, teaching, and collaboration dissolved. The impact rippled far beyond individual tutoring sessions. By gathering so many brilliant minds in one place, the library created a feedback loop of innovation. A botanist's observations might inspire a poet's metaphors. A physician's questions could send a mathematician scrambling for new calculations. This cross-pollination of disciplines turned Alexandria into a crucible of creativity, where breakthroughs didn't happen in isolation, they sparked chain reactions. Yet there's a bittersweet irony in this. For all its brilliance, the Hall of Living Books depended on something fragile: the scholars themselves. Unlike scrolls, humans aren't immortal. When these thinkers died, their knowledge, the unwritten nuances, the unrecorded flashes of insight vanished with them, leaving gaps no library could ever fill. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a sanctuary for approved knowledge. It was a vault for ideas too dangerous, too radical, or too heretical for the outside world. Among its lost treasures were texts that challenged religious dogma, defied scientific norms, and even threatened the power structures of their time. Take the legendary Hermetic writings, for example, scrolls attributed to the mythical sage Hermes Trismegistus, blending Egyptian mysticism with Greek philosophy. These works dabbled in alchemy, astrology, and the idea that humans could harness divine powers to transform the natural world. To some, this was wisdom. To others, it was outright blasphemy. Then there were the early Christian texts that never made it into the Bible Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas or the Apocryphon of John, which offered wildly different portrayals of Jesus' teachings. Imagine a version of Christianity where salvation came not through faith alone, but through secret knowledge passed down to a select few. These so-called Gnostic writings were later condemned as heresy, but in Alexandria they found a home alongside Orthodox scripture. The library didn't discriminate. It preserved voices that the rest of the world tried to silence. But perhaps the most tantalizing loss is Aristotle's lost dialogues, works the philosopher himself supposedly deemed too controversial for public release. Ancient sources whisper about texts where he questioned the immortality of the soul or explored ideas even his students weren't ready to hear. What if those scrolls contained philosophical bombshells that could have reshaped Western thought? This brings us to a darker possibility. Was the library targeted not just for its size but for its contents? When Julius Caesar's troops set fire to the harbor in 48 BCE, was it really an accident, or were there those who saw a chance to erase uncomfortable truths? Later, when Christian mobs or Muslim conquerors allegedly attacked the library's remnants, were they purging knowledge that threatened their authority? The irony is crushing. A place built to safeguard every perspective may have been destroyed precisely because it succeeded too well. What's left now are fragments and rumors, hints of what might have been. We'll never know how those forbidden texts could have altered history, but one thing's certain: the Library of Alexandria didn't just burn, it took entire worlds of thought with it. Callimachus wasn't just a librarian. He was a literary revolutionary who turned chaos into order with nothing but a reed pen and relentless curiosity. While the Ptolemies obsessively hoarded scrolls from across the known world, it was this scholar-poet who faced the monumental task of making sense of the madness. Picture a mountain of papyrus, works from Homer piled beside Babylonian star charts, Egyptian medical texts tangled with Persian love poems. Without guidance, the library's treasure trove was as impenetrable as a labyrinth. But Callimachus had a solution: the Pinax, a catalogue so groundbreaking it would shape how humanity organizes knowledge for millennia. Imagine walking into the library before his system existed: no titles on shelves, no sections, just endless rows of scrolls stacked haphazardly. Finding a specific text would have been like searching for a single grain of sand on Alexandria's shores. Callimachus changed all that by inventing the first known library classification system: 120 scrolls listing every work in the collection, sorted by genre, author, and subject. Epic poetry had its own section, so did astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Each entry included biographical details about the author, a summary of the work, even notes on its authenticity. This wasn't just a catalogue, it was a literary GPS for the ancient world. What's astonishing is how modern his approach feels. The Pinax laid the groundwork for principles we still use today: alphabetization, cross-referencing, subject headings. Callimachus didn't just organize scrolls, he created a language for navigating knowledge itself. Scholars could now trace the evolution of ideas across cultures or compare different authors' treatments of the same theme. A student researching geometry could locate every relevant text with ease, while a playwright might discover forgotten tragedies to inspire new works. The library transformed from a warehouse of books into a dynamic, searchable database. Yet Callimachus' genius didn't stop there. As a celebrated poet himself, he understood that knowledge wasn't just about storage, it was about connection. His system revealed hidden patterns, how Egyptian medicine influenced Greek practices, or how Persian myths echoed in Jewish texts. By mapping these relationships, he turned the library into a living network of ideas. The irony, much of his own poetry was lost to time, yet the Pinaques endured as his legacy. Even as flames consumed the library's scrolls centuries later, the principles Callimachus pioneered survived quietly, shaping every library, every archive, every digital search engine that followed. The next time you type a keyword into a database, remember, you're using the intellectual descendant of a poet's 2,000-year-old dream. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building, it was the beating heart of an intellectual wonderland known as the Mauseon, a temple dedicated to the Muses, those mythical patrons of arts and sciences. Imagine walking through columned halls where the air hummed with debate, passing sun-dappled courtyards where philosophers paced deep in thought, their sandals crunching on gravel paths lined with exotic plants. This wasn't merely a place to store scrolls, it was a vibrant, living academy where knowledge wasn't just preserved, it was performed, challenged, and reinvented daily. At its peak, the Mauseon resembled a cross between a modern university campus and a royal research institute. Lecture halls buzzed with scholars dissecting Homer's poetry or debating the finer points of Aristotelian logic. Open-air theaters hosted public demonstrations of scientific discoveries, where astronomers might unveil a new model of the cosmos to gasps from the crowd. Even the gardens were designed to inspire. Fragrant herbs from distant lands grew beside whispering fountains, creating spaces where quiet reflection could spark breakthroughs. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary. The Mauseon didn't just cater to human minds. Tucked away in its sprawling grounds were aviaries fluttering with rare birds, pens holding antelopes from Nubia, even Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, a giraffe gifted by an African king. These weren't mere menageries, they were living laboratories. Physicians studied animal anatomy to advance surgery. Natural philosophers observed behaviors to classify species. Poets drew metaphors from the grace of a prowling leopard or the dance of cranes at dawn. The line between zoo and research center blurred completely. Walking through this complex, you might stumble upon a botanical garden where healers cultivated medicinal plants one moment, then round a corner to find mathematicians scratching equations onto a courtyard's marble floor the next. Dining halls doubled as salons, where geographers argued over maps between bites of figs and cheese, while resident poets recited verses commissioned to celebrate the latest naval victory. Every element, from the art on the walls to the very layout of the buildings, was engineered to fuel creativity. The genius of the Mauseon lay in its holistic approach. Unlike modern institutions that silo disciplines into separate departments, this was a place where a conversation about music theory might lead to discoveries in acoustics, where a physician's notes on snake venom could inspire a playwright's tragic hero. Even the architecture played its part, colonnades designed to amplify whispers during philosophical debates, or shaded walkways positioned to catch Mediterranean breezes during summer symposia. Yet for all its grandeur, the Mauseon's true magic was how it democratized brilliance. Yes, the Ptolemies funded it, but its doors, at least initially, opened to anyone with talent, regardless of origin. A merchant's son from Rhodes could debate astronomy with a Persian priest. A Jewish physician might collaborate with an Egyptian alchemist. This cultural alchemy, this relentless collision of perspectives, is what made Alexandria's library district unlike any other place in history. Of course, such paradise couldn't last forever. The same open exchange of ideas that made the Mausian luminous also made it vulnerable. When political winds shifted or religious fervor rose, this garden of knowledge became a target. But while it stood, it proved something radical. That wisdom thrives not in isolation, but in ecosystem where scrolls, scholars, and even the occasional roaring lion all played their part. Beneath the marble floors and towering shelves of the Library of Alexandria, whispers persist of a hidden world, clandestine chambers where the rarest scrolls were kept safe from prying eyes, political turmoil, and even the elements. Recent archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have revealed tantalizing anomalies beneath the site of the ancient library, networks of tunnels and chambers that don't appear on any historical map. Could these be the remnants of a secret underground archive designed to protect the most precious texts from theft, fire, or decay? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. Ancient accounts describe how the Ptolemies went to extraordinary lengths to safeguard their collection. The Greek historian Strabo mentions vaults where sacred or forbidden works were stored away from the main halls. Even more intriguing, a 1st century CE text by the scholar Philo of Alexandria cryptically refers to the library's shadow, a phrase some interpret as code for its subterranean counterpart. If true, this hidden archive could have housed treasures too valuable or too controversial for public access. Imagine what might have been concealed there. The lost plays of Sophocles, whose surviving works represent just a fraction of his output, the complete poetry of Sappho, of which only fragments survive today. Or perhaps even the original manuscripts of thinkers like Democritus, whose theories on atoms were centuries ahead of their time. These wouldn't have been mere duplicates, they could have been master copies, scribed in the author's own hands or bearing their personal annotations. The underground vault might have been the ancient equivalent of a high-security rare books room, accessible only to the most trusted scholars or the Ptolemies themselves. Modern technology has added fuel to the mystery. In 2019, a team scanning the foundations of the ancient library district detected hollow spaces beneath the ruins, their dimensions suggesting purpose-built storage rather than natural cavities. One chamber, roughly the size of a small temple, aligns with descriptions of a sealed scriptorium where scribes worked on sensitive texts. Even more compelling, soil analysis revealed traces of organic material consistent with papyrus, hinting that scrolls might have been buried there intentionally, either for safekeeping or as part of some long-forgotten ritual. The implications are staggering. If these underground chambers existed, they could rewrite our understanding of the library's final days. While fires ravaged the surface, might some of the most irreplaceable works have survived beneath the ashes? Could they still lie hidden, waiting for the right shovel or radar pulse to uncover them? The dream isn't entirely impossible. In 2004, excavators in nearby Herculaneum managed to recover carbonized scrolls from a Roman villa, their contents now being deciphered using advanced imaging techniques. What if Alexandria holds a similar trove preserved in its secret catacombs? Until then, the underground library remains a ghost, a haunting possibility that keeps historians and treasure hunters alike wide-eyed at night. Every new scan, every fresh dig renews the hope that somewhere below the modern city, the words of the ancient world's greatest minds might yet whisper again. The common image of the Library of Alexandria's destruction, a single fiery catastrophe wiping out all knowledge in one night, is more myth than reality. The truth is far messier, a slow unraveling of neglect, accidents, and targeted attacks spanning centuries. The first major blow came in 48 BCE, when Julius Caesar's legions clashed with Ptolemaic forces in Alexandria's harbor. Trapped and outmaneuvered, Caesar ordered his men to set fire to the enemy fleet. Flames, whipped by coastal winds, leaped onto dockside warehouses. Some scholars believe these stored scrolls awaiting transfer to the library. While the main complex may have escaped total destruction, tens of thousands of texts likely turned to ash in what the Roman philosopher Seneca later called a massacre of the written word. Yet the library persisted, limping forward for another 400 years. The next death knell sounded in 391 CE, when Christian zealots, emboldened by Emperor Theodosius' decrees against paganism, ravaged the Serapeum, a temple annex housing part of the library's collection. Accounts describe zealots smashing statues of classical thinkers, tearing scrolls to shreds in the streets, and using parchment for kindling in bonfires that lit up Alexandria's skyline. This wasn't just vandalism, it was ideological cleansing, an attempt to erase pre-Christian wisdom from memory. Then comes the murkiest chapter, the Arab conquest of Alexandria in 642 CE. Popular legend claims Caliph Omar ordered the library's remaining scrolls burned, declaring, "If they contradict the Quran, they are heresy. If they agree, they are redundant." But here's the catch: most historians now dismiss this as a fabrication, a tale spun centuries later to vilify Muslim rulers. By this point, the library was likely already a ghost of its former self, its halls hollowed out by centuries of decay, earthquake damage, and bureaucratic indifference. The real tragedy isn't a single villain. It's the slow suffocation of knowledge under shifting regimes that no longer valued what the Ptolemies had so fiercely protected. What makes this gradual decline so haunting is the compounding loss. Each event didn't just destroy scrolls, it erased contexts. When Caesar's fire consumed works on Phoenician navigation, it took with them the maritime knowledge of a civilization that had vanished. Christian rioters didn't just burn pagan texts, they severed ties to philosophical traditions that had nurtured early Christian thought itself. And if Muslim forces did discard remnants, they might have unwittingly tossed the last surviving copies of treatises on medicine, astronomy, or mathematics that could have accelerated the Islamic Golden Age. The library didn't die in one dramatic inferno. It bled out scroll by scroll, over generations, a cautionary tale about how easily humanity's collective memory can unravel when we take preservation for granted. While the Library of Alexandria's physical halls crumbled, its ideas refused to die. Like embers carried on the wind, fragments of its collection survived, smuggled out by scholars, traded by merchants, or hidden in private vaults during the library's slow decline. These scattered scrolls became seeds, sprouting centuries later in places the Ptolemies could never have imagined. Take the case of a 9th century Baghdad scholar hunched over a Greek medical text in the House of Wisdom. The manuscript he's translating isn't just any book. It's a copy of a copy, tracing back to an original that once rested on Alexandria's shelves. Through his Arabic translation, Galen's pioneering work on anatomy would eventually reach medieval Europe, revolutionizing Renaissance medicine. This underground railroad of knowledge had many stops. When Christian mobs threatened Alexandria's pagan scholars in the 4th century, some fled to Constantinople, carrying precious codices in their luggage. These texts found safe harbor in the Byzantine Empire's imperial library, where scribes meticulously preserved them even as the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Meanwhile, other works traveled east. Syriac Christians translated Aristotle into their language. Muslim conquerors later rendered those versions into Arabic, and Jewish scholars in Spain finally translated them into Latin. It's a dizzying chain, a philosophical idea born in Athens, copied in Alexandria, sheltered in Antioch, debated in Baghdad, and finally reborn in Toledo's translation schools 500 years later. The impact was explosive. When these rediscovered texts reached Europe, they didn't just fill gaps in knowledge, they shattered medieval worldviews. Ptolemy's geocentric model, preserved in Arabic star charts, challenged the Church's simplistic cosmology. Euclid's geometry, smuggled out of Alexandria centuries earlier, gave Renaissance artists the mathematical tools to perfect perspective painting. Most startling of all was the recovery of Archimedes' lost works, including his groundbreaking theories on calculus concepts so advanced they wouldn't be fully understood until Newton's time. These weren't just old books, they were intellectual time capsules detonating centuries after their creation. Yet the journey wasn't always smooth. Some texts arrived corrupted, their meanings distorted by generations of copying errors or ideological editing. The Aristotle that medieval Europe revered was filtered through Islamic commentators like Avicenna, who added layers of interpretation the original author might not recognize. Other works survived only in fragments, a chapter here, a quotation there, leaving scholars to puzzle over what had been lost. The playwright Menander, once as famous as Sophocles, exists today only in brief passages quoted by other authors. We know his comedies were in Alexandria's collection, but the full texts vanished, leaving us with maddening glimpses of what might have been. What's truly remarkable is how these rescued ideas shaped history's arc. Without the Arabic translations of Alexandrian texts, European universities might never have developed. Without the Byzantine scholars who preserved Greek philosophy, the Renaissance could have lacked its foundational spark. Even now, peeling back the layers, you'll find traces everywhere: Dante's cosmology reflecting Ptolemy, Shakespeare's legal references echoing lost Alexandrian scrolls on rhetoric, Copernicus citing Arabic astronomers who'd studied the library's legacy. The fire didn't win, the ideas survived. The dream of the Library of Alexandria didn't vanish with its ashes, it simply evolved. In 2002, rising like a phoenix on the shores of the same Mediterranean coastline, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina opened its doors, its sleek, modern design echoing the ancient world's most ambitious temple of knowledge. But this isn't just a tribute to the past, it's a bold leap into the future with a mission that would make even the Ptolemies gasp: to digitally reassemble the lost wisdom of the ancient library while safeguarding humanity's collective knowledge for millennia to come. At first glance, the parallels are striking. Just as the original library sought to gather every scroll in the known world, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina has embarked on a quest to digitize millions of books, manuscripts, and recordings from every corner of the globe. Their scanners hum day and night, transforming fragile parchments, crumbling newspapers, and even oral traditions into immutable digital code. But here's where the vision expands beyond antiquity. This isn't just about preservation, it's about accessibility. A child in Nairobi can now study rare Sanskrit texts, while a scholar in Oslo listens to recordings of indigenous storytellers from the Amazon. The barriers that once kept knowledge locked away have dissolved. One of the library's most urgent projects is the Endangered Languages Archive, a race against time to document vanishing dialects before their last speakers fade into history. Field linguists fan out across remote villages, capturing not just vocabulary and grammar, but the stories, songs, and worldviews embedded within these tongues. When the Tsuut'ina language of Canada had only 30 fluent elders left, the library's team worked alongside them to create interactive dictionaries and teaching tools. Similarly, the whistled language of La Gomera, used by shepherds in the Canary Islands to communicate across valleys, now lives on in high-resolution audio files. These aren't mere recordings, they're digital lifeboats for entire cultures. Yet the ambition doesn't stop there. The library's Ghost Scrolls initiative combines cutting-edge technology with historical detective work, attempting to reconstruct lost texts from secondary sources. Using AI trained on surviving fragments, researchers piece together plausible versions of works like Aristotle's lost dialogues or Sappho's missing poems. It's not perfect, think of it as literary forensic anthropology, but when a team recently used this method to suggest a possible reconstruction of Menander's comedy, The Double Deceiver, classicists sat up in stunned silence. For the first time in 16 centuries, they were reading lines that might have once echoed through Alexandria's halls. The challenges, of course, are staggering. Unlike the Ptolemies, who could simply confiscate scrolls from docked ships, today's librarians navigate copyright laws, political sensitivities, and the mind-boggling scale of digital information. Then there's the question of longevity. How do you ensure data survives when file formats become obsolete every few years? The library's answer lies in its time capsule strategy, storing multiple copies across different media, from etched silicon disks to synthetic DNA strands that could last thousands of years. It's a far cry from papyrus, but the goal remains unchanged: outlast empires. Perhaps the most poetic twist is how this modern marvel has become a guardian of its own predecessor's legacy. Deep in its climate-controlled vaults rests the Codex Sinaiticus, one of the oldest surviving Bibles, painstakingly digitized page by page. Nearby, high-resolution scans of the Dead Sea Scrolls allow researchers to examine cracks and ink strokes without risking damage to the originals. Even the library's architecture whispers of continuity, its vast, tilting roof designed to mimic the rising sun of ancient Egyptian symbolism, while its granite walls are carved with letters from every human script ever devised. In the end, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina embodies a paradox. It's both a mourning for what was lost and a defiant celebration of what endures. The fires that consumed the ancient library couldn't extinguish humanity's stubborn drive to collect, to question, to remember. And while we'll never recover every scroll that turned to ash, this digital phoenix offers something equally powerful: the chance to ensure that no knowledge ever disappears so utterly again. The story of the Library of Alexandria isn't just about what was lost, it's about what we refuse to let disappear. This wasn't merely a building filled with scrolls. It was humanity's first grand experiment in collective wisdom, a beacon that proved knowledge could transcend borders, languages, and even time itself. Every time we digitize a rare manuscript or decode an ancient text using new technology, we're channeling the same relentless curiosity that once drove the Ptolemies to scour the world for scrolls. The library's legacy isn't confined to history books. It lives on in every research lab, every open-access database, every whispered dream of a future where no idea is ever forgotten. But here's what's truly haunting. The library's destruction didn't just erase knowledge, it erased possibilities. Imagine a world where Euclid's lost works on advanced geometry had survived to inspire medieval builders, or where Hipparchus' star catalogues reached Renaissance astronomers intact. Would Galileo have made his discoveries sooner? Would medicine have leaped forward centuries faster? The library's ashes didn't just represent the past burning away. They were futures snuffed out before they could even begin. Yet even in its ruin, the library teaches us something profound. Its fragments, scattered across continents and languages, prove how resilient ideas can be. A single rescued manuscript might spark an entire scientific revolution centuries later, like a seed lying dormant until the conditions are just right. That's the paradox at the heart of this story. Though the library fell, its spirit couldn't be extinguished. Every time we rebuild after disaster, whether it's war, fire, or the slow erosion of time, we're answering a challenge thrown down 2,000 years ago. So let's end with a question that lingers like smoke in the air. If even one more shelf of those scrolls had survived, what might our world look like today? Would we have unlocked the secrets of the universe sooner? Would lost philosophies have reshaped our societies in ways we can't even fathom? The library's ghost whispers that knowledge isn't just power, it's potential. And perhaps that's the most enduring lesson of all. Now, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What lost text do you wish had survived the flames? How different might history be if the library still stood? Drop your answers below, because the conversation, like the pursuit of knowledge itself, never really ends.